So this is our fifth session of the Small Dairy Herd Management series. So we are halfway through, you guys. Today's session is called Budgeting for Your Herd. So talking about all the things that you need financially to make sure that you have a strong plan in place before you start your small dairy herd. So again, this series has been full of different experts, both professionally involved and as well as some on the finance side, as well as production, forages, anything and everything. So here is our team for the webinar series. Today we have Jake Hefley with us, who I will introduce in just a little bit. So the goals of our series, of course, is just to give an introduction to the dairy industry and its components. We are mainly focusing here in Missouri, but across the nation as well, we'll add in some little tidbits here and there. Another goal is just to explore how to best manage your small herd. We're breaking it down into step-by-step sections to make it easier to understand. And as well as within those sections, hopefully everybody can find something useful to them, whether you're a beginner or you haven't even seen a cow in your entire life, or if you have 50 years of experience under your belt. Hopefully this will help everybody out just a little bit. Okay, a little bit of basic housekeeping before we get really started. If you have a question during the webinar, since we have a couple more people on today, you're more than welcome to use that chat box. It's going to be in the bottom bar of your screen. All you have to do is click on that and it will bring up a question box. Go ahead and type in your questions and you will send them my way, and everybody will be able to see them so we can answer them as soon as possible. Of course, if you have any other questions that maybe okay. Okay, I think I lost you on my end. Can everybody see my screen okay? Perfect. Okay, so again, if we have any questions, just put those in the chat box. And then once we get to the end of our session today, we can all unmute and discuss any questions that we may have. And then at the bottom of this slide is my email. Of course, feel free to utilize that for any other questions you might have. All right. So I am the host for this entire webinar series, and I have enjoyed it so far. My role in MU Extension is a dairy field specialist. So I cover the Southwest region, more so the east half of all the way from Webster County, so Marshfield, Missouri, out to Howell County or West Plains, Missouri. So I do anything from face-to-face programs with those farmers and producers, as well as beginning farmers or producers, any kind of educational articles, and even farm visits. I also work on a bunch of different advisory boards, from soil and water committees all the way to the fair board. And then my personal interest is cattle reproduction and endocrinology. So if you have any questions that may be more specific in that area, please feel free to reach out. So let's talk about you guys today before we get started. You're free to unmute yourself. You can put it in the chat box, however you want to share. But our questions for you are, what is your experience with dairy farming and where are you looking to go with dairy? Another question, more specifically to help Jake get to know you better, is, have you ever made a budget for an agriculture venture before? It can be something small like 4-H or FFA, or it can be for a bigger operation. So we'll take a few minutes. Go ahead and share in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Hey, Scott.
Hello, Chloe.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Well, if you see anything, feel free to pipe in as well. For everybody that's in the webinar today, Dr. Scott Polk is our extension vet for dairy. So he's a valuable resource to us. So if you have any questions that he may be able to help you with, think about them and you can throw them in the chat for him as well. Sorry to volunteer you there.
Oh, that's quite all right. Thank you for sending the reminder out.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right, friends, thanks for sharing a little bit of your stories with us. We'll go ahead and keep moving along. Okay, so today's speaker that we have with us is another one of my MU Extension colleagues. His name is Jake Hefley. He's a field specialist in ag business, and he is located in Taney County. So if anyone has heard of Branson, he is close to there. He actually has 9 total counties that he works with, and he really helps those producers, more so agribusiness based, to manage their finances and work on those plans so that way that their business is successful in the future. His Bachelor of Science is in Ag Business, and it's from the College of the Ozarks. He does have his Master's in Ag Economics from Kansas State. So his work primarily focuses on value-added agriculture. So he's on the value-added meats team and informed decision making. So he also works with Missouri Agriculture, Food and Forestry Innovation Center, and is involved in many other areas as well. So we're happy to have him with us. And Jake, you're more than welcome to go ahead and share your screen.
Thanks, Chloe.
Oh,
Can you see my slides?
all good on my end.
Okay. So I'm going to go over some budgeting for your dairy herd. Today, not really anything in depth, but just basics and sort of stuff to think about when you're building a budget and thinking about sort of the financial side of having a small dairy herd. Um, like Chloe said, I'm an ag business specialist. I'm here in Southwest Missouri. I'm in Taney County, but I serve 9 counties in total: Christian, Douglas, Howell, Ozark, Stone, Taney, Texas, Webster, and Wright. So a pretty big area. Similar to Chloe, it's sort of the east side of our Southwest region. And I always put a picture of my family in there when I can. Obviously, I just love to show them off. My wife Emma and my 1-year-old Magnolia, who just learned how to walk and is learning how to run and to get in everything. So she keeps me busy, but that's just a little bit about me. And the first thing I think about when we talk about budgeting is just knowing what your goals are. So I'm curious if you guys, if you just come off chat or come off mute or put it in the chat, sort of what your goals are with this. Is this sort of something that you're wanting to provide income? Is it a hobby? Just for your own personal enjoyment? I'm just curious if anybody's willing to share that, because it does make a difference, sort of how you start going about looking at budgets and thinking about that side of it. Let's give a minute.
So, as a veterinarian and looking at production medicine, um, its bottom line is always economics.
Hmm.
How do I help a producer be more profitable? And if they're more profitable, then I get to stay in business and work with more cows.
Right. Yeah, so starting as a hobby before income production. So like Chloe said, and I said, I'm an ag business specialist, so I'm going to kind of focus on, the for-profit side. But it's important to note that budgeting is important regardless, even if it's just something that you're doing for a hobby. It's really beneficial to look at what you've invested and sort of estimate your potential, um, you know, investments in potentially returns with your business. So like I said, whether you're seeking profit or enjoyment, it's important to understand again what you're investing in, what sort of cost and income this is producing or could produce. So if it's for profit, obviously just financial stability to make sure it's actually turning a profit. That's an important part of a business. Understanding your cost of production, what it costs to get you to, and we'll talk about this later, whatever you're finally producing, whether that's milk, cheese, whatever it be, just understanding the cost to get that product, determining what price you would sell that at, and what price is actually going to be profitable for you, help you make decisions, help you plan for the future, then also help you look back to prior years and sort of track the progression of your business over time. And if it's for enjoyment, still just financial responsibility, understanding, financially how this hobby is impacting you, measuring how much you've invested in this, and then also just comparing production decisions. Even if it's for enjoyment, it's good to compare those decisions and how they'll impact your operation or your hobby financially. So just some basics of what we're talking about when we talk about budgeting. Really what a budget is going to show us is profit, hopefully profit, which is just income minus cost. So income, again, really basic. It's just how much you produce times how much you sell it for. And the costs are going to be fixed costs and your variable costs. Fixed costs are things that no matter how much you produce, you're going to pay the same amount either way. So you think of things like lease payments, insurance, taxes, depreciation. No matter how much milk or whatever you're producing, those costs are going to be there. Going to be something you have to pay. And then variable costs change with production. So the amount of feed you feed, depending on the size of your herd, that can change. If you're bottling something, the number of bottles you put the milk in, that changes based on how much you produce. So your costs are going to include both of those. And we separate those just for better understanding. Again, I put on the slides just some examples there. But that's just the basics of what your budget's going to show you. But even though it's really basic information, there's a lot of value you can gain from it. And hopefully we can get some of that understood today. So the first thing I'll show you is our dairy budget. So MU has budgets for all different types of ag enterprises, beef, dairy, hogs, really anything you can think of, forages even. We update these annually we try to estimate the most accurate numbers for all the input prices and the output prices. And this is the one for our grazing dairy budget. This is 2024's version. So as far as small dairies, we don't have anything. And from what I can tell, none of the other, university extensions have a small dairy budget. So maybe that's a hole we need to fill. But this is just kind of showing you an example of what you might include in the budget. So starting at the top, it has income, obviously milk sales, but you also include other sales that maybe aren't your primary sort of enterprise, bull and surplus heifers, cull cows. This one even includes government payments. So list all of your income from all your different sources. Operating costs, which as I sound are just your costs to operate your business. And these you can sort of think of these as those variable costs. It's sort of interchangeable there. Two, I just want to point out our feed cost and labor cost. Feed, because feed is typically the biggest cost that we see on most animal ag operations, and this is no different than that. So just want to note that that's a really important thing to keep track of because it can add up really quickly. Also labor costs, which is something that's often really sort of overlooked. I don't think a lot of times people don't budget for labor costs or keep track of how much labor they contribute to their operation or their business. But it's really important. In economics, we always include labor cost because there is value in that. And really, if this is something that's a hobby, maybe you don't worry about that. Maybe you just enjoy the labor. Maybe it's just sort of a stress release. But if it's for profit and you're wanting to do this to make money, it is important to think about how much labor you contribute. And think about other ways that you could spend your time that would, generate revenue, produce income for you. So when you're thinking about a for-profit business, that is important on basically alternative ways that you could spend your time and spend your labor. Um, then you go down to the ownership cost. This is like the fixed cost, like I was mentioning. So just depreciation on buildings, your equipment, interest on all your land, buildings, equipment, interest on your animals, and then insurance and taxes. The stuff that you just have to pay, and the stuff that uh, can really eat away at your profit if you don't track, because sometimes you get in a routine of just, well, I have to pay this every year. But it's important to keep track of what that's actually costing you. And one thing I do want to mention on this, though, this is our grazing budget, but it is for a large scale dairy. So these estimates that we built in are for a 150 cow dairy. Now, there's a spreadsheet that goes alongside this where you can change all the numbers. You can change how many cows you have in rotation, all your different costs, what you're selling milk for, all those things. But if you have a small, dairy herd, 10 animals less, even, probably 20 animals less, maybe even 50 animals less, this budget really wasn't built for that. It was built for a larger scale dairy, selling milk at more commodity prices. So I'm just using this as a reference, not necessarily go use this and plug your numbers in, because it doesn't really fit. Our estimates don't really fit with a small scale dairy, but it at least gives you an idea of some of the categories and sort of things that you might build in your budget and think about when you're thinking about your own estimates, your own cost, your own income, just the things to include in your own budget. And where to start? Like I said, we don't have a budget already built. We don't have estimates already made for this type of operation. So the place to start is just to estimate your own numbers. So if you already are in production, looking at past years to see, what you spent on feed over the last years, or what you've got for your milk and whatever you're selling over the last few years. It's easier to sort of build a budget from that standpoint if you've already been in production. But if you're not in production, it's still important to budget to estimate, profit, return, potentially loss in what you're doing. So with that, you just kind of have to do your research. And by doing your research, I mean, look around to get at least an sort of educated guess for numbers. So, look at your feed stores for feed prices on what you would feed your animals. If whatever you're selling, if you're selling milk, if you're selling cheese, ice cream, whatever, look around for similar products and just kind of gauge pricing. That way you can talk to other producers doing similar things. MU Extension, that's something you can use us for if you have questions about that. Obviously, don't hesitate to reach out and we can help you sort of gauge those numbers for your own operation. And then what we like to do is convert cost and income to either per cow or a per unit sold basis. So once you have that total profit divided by either the number of cows in your herd or the number of gallons of milk you're producing. And this just makes it easier to understand when you have it on this sort of standardized basis, and it allows you to more easily compare year to year, regardless of if your herd size changed or if production levels change. It's hard to compare different years when you have them just, the total profit from each year, and maybe you have 10 cows one year and 15 cows the next year. It's hard to really compare those. And so when you have it standardized to, per cow or per gallon of milk sold basis, it's a little easier to point out maybe where you're efficient or inefficient, and easier to compare different years. And really an important part of budgeting anyway, is the record keeping. So like I said, if you're already in production, it's a lot easier because you have your own numbers. And your budget, we like to say your budget's only as good as the numbers you put in it. So if you keep good track of what's going on in your operation, you have, accurate, detailed records, and you put that into a budget, it's going to be a lot more insightful and accurate than if, sort of guess things here and there and just kind of mesh that all into records and, kind of throw that in a budget. The more accurate, more detailed your records are, the more your budget's going to tell you. So like I said, if you're already in production, it's important to keep good records to put that in your budget. If you're not yet in production, if you're going into production or just new to it, it's important to start now, so that, in your first, year of operating, you can get a better idea of what's going on. And then going into the next year, you're budgeting, you have a better idea of sort of your estimates for your cost and your income. And just besides budgets, their business records are just really important to run a successful business. Think about for taxes, for government assistance programs, that's often required. Loans, leases, grants. If you want to apply for a grant, it helps to put together what's going on in your operation, and also just help you make better decisions. Um, it takes out the guesswork, really, in making decisions, and trying to predict the future trends of your business. Those records are really important. And how much is enough? There's not really a perfect answer. It's great to keep track of every little minute detail that goes on in your operation. But if you don't utilize all that information, it's a waste of time. And sometimes people kind of, I think, overcommit themselves on that. And then it just gets a little too daunting, I guess. It takes a lot of work to run a dairy, even a small dairy. And one thing that can kind of go by the wayside is keeping records and keeping up track with what's financially going on, and even what's going on the production side with my animals. So it's really unique to each operation. You want records that fit your operation, they're easy to maintain, that you'll actually keep updated, and then provide you the information you need. There's actually a quote from Albert Einstein that I use when talking about this that I think fits well. He said, everything that can be counted does not necessarily count, and everything that counts cannot necessarily be counted. So there's a lot of things that we can count that we won't utilize. So if you're not utilizing it, don't waste your time and sort of make it more of a daunting task than it needs to be. But the main picture is different operations have different needs. So it's unique to each operation. But overall, what you want to track is what you budget. And sort of the things that I showed you in that example budget, which is your income, expenses, production levels. And then on the production side, apart from the financial side, just keeping individual animal records are helpful for you production to make decisions and plan and understand what's going on that side. And this is one thing I want to touch on. One thing that is a valuable thing that you can learn from budgeting is your break-even price. So it's hard to find really a list. If you're a small scale dairy producing milk or cheese or anything along those lines, there's not really a good place to look of sort of this is what you should be selling that for, or this is the average cost of that. That's easier on the large scale stuff, but on the small scale stuff, it's not as easy. So it puts a little bit more on you to understand your own pricing. And this is important regardless when you're selling products, just understanding your break-even price. But your break-even price is just what price you're selling that product for to where it's just a wash. You're not making money, you're not losing money. Not losing money is the important part. You like to be making money, but you definitely don't want to be losing money. So this sort of ties in with budgeting, is just understanding this. And there's really just two steps. The first is understanding your cost of production, which is just your average variable cost. Like I said, the costs that change with the level of production, and then average fixed cost, which is things like taxes, interest, depreciation that you're going to be paying regardless of how much you produce. Now, their average cost is just the cost divided by the units sold. So just averaging that out. And then estimating demand, and this part isn't easy. And it's not easy, and also can have a big impact on if you're actually pricing your product to where you're breaking even or not losing money. So it's important to be cautious of overestimating demand. That can be pretty detrimental if you set pricing If you overestimate demand, set pricing accordingly, which would be low, then don't reach those level of sales. That's when you can end up in the red. So it's important to analyze scenarios with different levels of sales because you don't, that's the one thing you really don't know how much you're going to sell. You know how much you'll sell it for. You have a good idea of what it'll cost to produce. But the one real unknown is how much you'll actually sell. So that's why we do this, what I'm going to show right here. So this is just an example of calculating a break-even price. So I'm just going to throw an example of a small dairy processing their own milk and selling chocolate milk gallons. So like I said, we look at the variable cost, which is the cost to produce the milk, the bottle you're putting it in, how much flavoring, the cost of that per gallon, things like that that'll change on how many gallons you produce. Fixed cost, again, like I've said, just insurance, interest, advertising. If you're running advertising, that's more of a fixed cost as well. And we're just going to say we expect to sell 5,000 gallons. Again, this is sort of numbers, but just to show you how you look at this. So $3, which is our variable cost per unit. And then we'll take the $10,000, our fixed cost divided by the expected sales. So we have our average variable cost, which is our variable cost per unit, and then our average fixed cost. We just add those together and we get a $5 break-even price. So if I keep these variable costs and the fixed costs, all that stays the same, I sell exactly 5,000 gallons. I charge $5 per gallon. That's my break-even price. I'm not making money. I'm not losing money. It's just a wash. So I did this table on the right is what we call a sensitivity table. And this is what I was talking about. Look at different scenarios of selling more or less products. So say I set the price at $5 and I only sell 3,000 gallons instead of 5,000. You can see at 3,000 gallons, my break-even price is $1.33 a gallon difference, which 1 gallon isn't that big of a deal, but when you get to a few thousand, that can take a pretty big hit on you. So this just helps you understand, I expect to sell 5,000 gallons, but if I don't, do I need to set my prices higher to just protect myself? You obviously have to think about what people actually pay for it, what people are actually willing to pay, but it's important on your side to understand, different scenarios, what happens, what do I need to sell this for to just at least avoid losing money. And also, one thing I'll point out on this, so this is just for raising the cow, producing the milk, selling just chocolate milk gallons. Let's say that's the only thing you produce. If you sell chocolate milk gallons, you sell just whole milk and you sell cheese, you have different enterprises of different products you're selling. You really have to break it up at that point. So basically, look at your cattle producing milk as an enterprise, look at your cheese production as an enterprise, look at your milk production as an enterprise. If you keep it all combined, like it is in this one, again, it works if you're selling one product. But if you're selling more than one product, you really need to look at those individually because you might be making money on the chocolate milk and losing it on the cheese or whatever else you're producing. So it's really important to not look at that as a whole business, but look at each enterprise or section of that business as basically its own entity. And then, look at your cattle as their own entity and just separate those. And that helps you decide or sort of visualize what you're efficient at, what's inefficient, if you need to increase production in one thing or decrease production or even stop it altogether. You have to separate that to understand that. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And this is something else, just kind of going in line with budgeting, but a little bit different, I guess. Business planning is also just another aspect of running a successful business. And this is important whether you're new to the business or whether you're already in business. It's just having a plan. The business plan is really, we like to say it serves as a roadmap. There's different directions to get to the same location. I just threw this example in there. So I just bought a house in Forsyth a few months ago. And I've been making a lot of trips to Menards recently. So every time I go, I have to decide which way I want to go. They're all about the same time, but there's different distances. It's a different route. Again, going to the same destination, but I have to decide if I want to go, more miles, but I go on the highway, I can drive faster, or if I go the shorter route, but I'll go slower, and maybe I run the risk of getting behind somebody going slow in a two-lane road. It just helps me pick where I want to end up, how I'm going to get there, and just think about all the things I might encounter on the way. It just helps me organize basically that plan of my business. It also helps shows people outside of your business that aren't familiar with your plans, sort of what you intend to do. This is really important, obviously, when looking to get a loan. That loan officers going to want to know that you have thought about what you want to do. You have a plan that you want to stick to, and maybe it's flexible, but you have an idea of what you want to do. You've thought about it. You've sort of talked about it with everybody inside your business, your family, and you have an idea. So it's important for that. And then just keep track as you sort of move along. That whatever route you pick just helps you keep track of what your goal is. And one thing, just talking about potential business models, for small dairies, there's a few different options. Obviously, this first one, not really feasible for a small dairy to sell to a milk co-op, at commodity milk prices. That's one that's not feasible, but there are different options. So I just threw a few on here just to talk about, some options you might have using a small dairy as a business, to generate income. One is sell to smaller scale processors. So maybe it's a producer that started to process their own milk, and they could sell more milk, but they don't produce enough on their farm. But they have the capacity to push more milk out. So, maybe selling to something like that would be an option where you would get sort of a higher price than selling to a milk co-op. Raw milk sales is an option as long as you do it, under the legal guidelines of that. And then processing your own milk where you can create your own milk products would sort of be the final business model that I would talk about for a small dairy. So as you're thinking about your business plan, there's really three things that you have to really think about. The first one, obviously, is there a market or is there demand for your product? It's great if you have a great product and you think it's great, but there has to be a market or sort of an outlet to sell that to. You have to think about who your customers are, where they're at, how much they're willing to pay for these types of products. If there's, competition in that market, or if you're sort of a novel product, you just have to think about that side because that obviously has to be there to be successful. And then you think about the assets, what you have, what you need, what you lack to sort of run this business, and what makes you uniquely suited for this over somebody else. So those are just important things to think about. And then once you think about those and you have a plan, that's when, as a new producer or somebody considering, going into a production of some small dairy products, then that's when you throw it in a budget and, use your best estimates. If you're already in production, use your numbers, but use your best estimates and just check, does this actually pencil out? It may all look good, and then you put it on paper and think, I don't see a way that I would actually make money doing this. So it's important to do that on the front end, if you're considering doing something new. And lastly, I just want to go over if you need help or you just want somebody to talk to you about stuff like this. Anybody in the ag business and policy group would be happy to help you or talk to you about budgets and just sort of how to manage your finances. So here's a map, depending on where you're at in Missouri. If you're in Missouri, you can see me, I'm in Taney County. I have 9 counties. I share our Southwest region with Jennifer Lutz, and then we have people all over the state. If for some reason there is somebody in Northeast Missouri in one of those counties that you don't have an ag business person directly covering your county, we have a vacant position there. You can feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help or direct you to the right person for that. So just wanted to show this up there and basically let you know that no matter where you're at in the state, or even if you're outside of the state, we have people that would be more than happy to talk to you and help you think through this. And I also want to just put a little plug. So Chloe mentioned it. She went through my bio, but I'm in a group. It's called the Missouri Agriculture, Food, and Forestry Innovation Center. So it's really our goal to help value-added producers. So anybody that is a producer and selling a value-added product, so if you're processing your own milk, if you're making cheese, anything along those lines, value-added, anything outside of, the typical commercial ag products. We provide technical assistance. We do business planning, financial analysis. We do a lot of work helping people find and apply for grants. When they're ready to scale their business, we do a lot of work helping people find that capital and sort of get that push. So just want to put a plug there. If you're in a value-added space, selling value-added products, or that's something you're looking into, you can look at our website. You can just sign up for assistance, and one of our business counselors will be connected with you. We'll just meet with you and get your ideas and see how we can help. I also wanted to share, I'm going to put these in the chat after I'm done. But these are some of the resources that some of the stuff I talked about was going off today. So these are all MU resources, a few different guides. So small acreage business planning. It's just great if you're thinking about, starting a business and want to utilize small acreage. It's just very good at going over some of the things I talked about today and a little bit more. I'll put a link to the budget that I showed today. Again, that's not necessarily for a small scale herd, but it gives you an idea of some of the things you need to think about for including in your own budget. We have a guide on break-even pricing that goes a little more in depth than what I talked about. And then adding value in agriculture, food, and forestry is just a guide on value-added agriculture for those thinking about getting into that space. Then I'll also give a link to MAFIC, which is the Missouri Ag Food and Forestry Innovation Center. If you are in value-added production, like I said, or considering it, that's a free resource and just provides a lot of value if you want to consider that. And I'd throw in there my personal email. Feel free to nab that and reach out if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help. But I am going to stop sharing and I will drop all that stuff in the chat real quick.
Thank you, Jake. It's good to see, even if you're not planning to get into a larger scale herd, just to kind of have an idea of where to start and what things to include. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. And if anybody has any questions for Jake, I'll go ahead and open the floor for those right now. Okay, so again, all his information is in the chat box, and I can go ahead and share it too when I kind of email out our recap for today. But as always, if you think of any other questions for him, please feel free to throw those in the chat or send him an email. Otherwise, we will continue on. I just have a small little portion for us to finish out our talk with today. So again, sticking with the budgeting for our herd, let's talk a little bit more about different costs associated with getting started. So it's a little bit difficult to have that small dairy herd without your animals. So I tried to round up some of the prices within Missouri. So again, these are very, very, very loose prices, very just averages of the numbers that I could find. It is harder to find reports for dairy pricing in Missouri. So I did my best. So just take these with a grain of salt. And another reminder, these prices can vary even more greatly when we start talking about buying registered animals. So animals that come with papers with their lineage that is proven for generations versus just buying a grade animal that may not have that paperwork attached. Both are completely fine, but it just is whatever fits your purpose and your goals. those prices can also vary along with age, sex, and breed. So we're just going to talk with the very, very basics for now. So these were the numbers, again, very, very loose numbers that I was able to find. So calves right now for a 0 to 14-day-old animal are running from 475 to 645. Bull calves, so just the males only, again, that 0 to 14-day animal are around 545 to 585. And depending on where you are, again, these can fluctuate too, and depending on the season as well. Then we get into heifers, and if you've been keeping up with the cattle market in general, we are at a not a loss, but a very low number of heifers in our national cow herd across beef and dairy both. So open heifers, meaning they are not bred, so no calf in sight. They're running about $1,600 a head. And again, loose numbers, take it with a grain of salt. Bred heifers, so ones that are already bred and confirmed pregnant, they're running about 2,000 and up. And then when we talk about our cows, so our ones that have just freshened, so have just gave birth, or they are just open and ready to be bred, those are running about 1,500 and up. If we have a bred animal, again, confirmed pregnant, they're running about 2,200 per head and up. So again, these prices, I just found a very few on the USDA reports, as well as dairyherd.com that reports on some markets across the state and across the globe. So again, averages, and they can go up from here. And then once you have that herd and once you start creating product or milking your cow and then using that for what you wish, I surveyed some of the farms in our area that have smaller farm stands. And these were just some prices that I got back from them on what they're selling for. So again, like Jake was discussing, this can also vary for your input cost, your fixed cost, any kind of like opportunistic cost. If you're taking time away to create these products, what is that costing you in terms of your time? So again, these are all factored in and decided on for what it costs you to make them. So half gallons of milk are running about $4 in my direct area. Gallons are 12. Cream pints are 6. A quart of cream is 12. Cheese has been being priced about $1.50 per ounce. And then if you butcher any of your dairy animals, or say you breed that dairy cow back to beef and keep that calf and process it, you can also sell some of those beef products too. So another little value added there. Ground beef, they're selling for about $6 a pound. Ribeye steaks at $12 a pound. Filet, my absolute favorite, at $30 a pound. And stew meat is running about $10 a pound. So this is just kind of for you to see like the potential of what you can be doing with your products and just a little starting point, if you will. And then finally, to finish out for today, hang on tight. It's not going to be a whole math class, but just a little bit, so bear with me. So I did get these hay numbers from the weekly USDA report for Missouri. So if you're looking at fair grade hay, just for a round bale, this one's not priced per ton, so just the bale is $30 to $60. Again, this is dependent on quantity and supply at the time. Then we look at mixed grass per ton. Looking at a good or a premium quality, we're looking at about $125 to $200 per ton. So again, these prices can be found on the USDA weekly hay report for Missouri. So when we talk about these numbers and buying hay, because that's one of the biggest thoughts in our mind, is how are we going to feed these girls? How much do we need to feed? So an easy place to start, and again, this can vary depending on stage of lactation. So if your dairy cow has had their calf and they are actively producing milk, they're probably going to bump this percentage up just a bit. But just a regular old gal, just day in and day out, we can estimate that they eat about 2% of their body weight in dry matter. So dry matter means no moisture at all. So we factor out the moisture and calculate on that. So hang on tight, we'll keep going, it gets easier. So if we have a 1,200-pound cow, she would need about 24 pounds of hay on a dry matter basis. So again, all I did was times that 1,200 by 2% to get that 24 pounds. However, when we think about our hay is not completely and totally dry. So we have to factor in that moisture percent. So if we have a hay that is 90% dry and 10% moisture, how much do you actually feed? So again, we have to get rid of the moisture content when we're thinking about dry matter. So let's take that 24 pounds times that 90% dry matter. So once we take out the moisture, she'll actually need a little bit more hay to bump up that dry matter value. So she needs 26.67 pounds of hay per day. So wonderful. So we have 26 pounds of hay per day for that 1,200-pound cow. And then we think back to our cost that we just discussed at $200 per ton. How much does it cost to feed her hay every day? So to figure that out, I did that $200 hay cost per ton divided by 2,000 pounds, since that's how many pounds are in a ton. And I figured out that that hay is going to be 10 cents per pound. So remember, she eats 26.6 pounds per day, times that by the cost of 10 cents per pound. It's going to cost you to feed her every day for hay 2.67. So $2.67 a day for that cow. So wonderful. But we have to think about how often do we need to feed her that hay. So I just did a quick estimate based off of forage growth in Missouri, specifically fescue. So we are normally without fescue maybe from the end of October to the end of March. Is not great growth here in Missouri. So I estimated 150 days. So if we think we need to feed her for 150 days at the cost of $2.67 per day, we're looking at about $400 per cow to feed one cow hay through the winter. And then again, you can times that by however many cows that you have. But that's just a quick and easy calculation to figure out what to fill in for your budget for hay cost. So it seems a little drawn out. You guys will have access to these slides and the recording. And as always, I can share this individually as well. But does anybody have any questions about how to calculate how much hay you need? I know it's quite a bit. I was not a math major myself. Okay. So again, here is my contact info. That's all that I had for you guys today on my end. But there is my email, that is my office number. So feel free to reach out with any questions you may have. So I'll give you guys just a second if you need to jot that down or screenshot it. Okay. So again, we are past the halfway point in our series today, and our next session is going to be October 7th, and it will be on breeding basics. So how to get started in making some of those breeding decisions. And again, that's Monday, October 7th. Again, it'll be at 12 and we'll go till 1. And then I will do my best to get this recording posted and out to you as soon as possible, along with an evaluation form to fill out too. That helps us kind of determine our future programming and any changes or tweaks that we need to make. All right, friends. Well, again, I will open the floor for any questions for Jake or myself. Otherwise, you are free to go. That is all that we have for you today. And thanks again for joining us. So, Jake, do you have anything else to add or anything you can think of?